Hi crafters, it's Kathy. I promised you that I would show you how to make a Valentine card if you've never made a card before. So the first thing I just want to stress is that there's no rules. You can make, when it comes to handmade, you make it however you would like. But I will give you some tips on, here's one way to make a card. So this paper that I'm using, this is what you can get at any of your local scrapbooking stores. It's a piece of cardstock, so it's heavier than what you would put through your printer. It's what they call 65-pound paper, but it's not super heavy. And this size is what we call 8.5 by 11. So it's 11 inches by 8.5 inches wide. Sometimes the paper comes with this strip on here, which is the barcode strip, and the branding or the price can be on there. Sometimes it doesn't have that. So if it has this strip on here, it's actually going to be a little bit longer than 8.5 by 11. So here's one that doesn't have the barcode strip on there. So you can see it's 8.5 by 11. This one's a little bit bigger because of the strip. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut that strip off, and then it'll leave us with an 8.5 by 11. So if you have a paper trimmer at home, if you do scrapbooking or for any reason have a paper trimmer, that obviously is going to make the easiest way to cut your paper. If you don't have that, you can always use a ruler or anything with a straight edge and put a craft knife on it, or draw a line and cut it with scissors. So you can make it happen with minimal tools. But if you do any kind of paper crafting, it's certainly nice to have the trimmer, because then you get an easy straight line. So I'm lining up this end with 11 inches. That's where my paper is going to cut down to. There's a little ledge up here, which is off camera, a little ledge here. So I make sure that my camera or my I can't do a video and cut cards at the same time, apparently. Okay, so there's a little ledge on my trimmer. And I want to make sure that my paper is right up flat against that edge. If I have it a little bit crooked, I'll exaggerate here. See that big gap? Now it's going to trim my paper crooked. So to get it straight, I want it pushed right up against this ledge all the way across. I want my paper to 11, so I'm going to find my 11 inches, which you probably can't see because of the light glare, but that's at 11 inches. And then this is my blade. I'm just going to push it right up and look at, cut it right off. Another tip when you're using your paper trimmer, if you ever find that when you cut your paper, fold your cards, that it turns out it's not perfectly square, here's a tip. If you start with your blade at the top and pull down, you might be having a tendency that when you pull down, it's pulling your paper just slightly crooked, just enough that it's no longer square. So if you find that your paper is not cutting square, start with your blade at the bottom and cut up. That way, if you're pushing or your paper sliding, it's just being slid farther against this ledge, which helps it to stay square. So that's just a little tip there. So with our 8.5 by 11 paper now, we're actually going to cut it in half this way, because this will make 2 standard size cards. So when it's 11 inches, I want to cut it in half. That's going to make 5.5 inches is where I'm going to cut it. So I find on my trimmer where my 5.5 inches is, place this edge at the 5.5, and I'm going to start with my blade at the bottom and push up. Oh, and it didn't quite cut all the way through because it's time to replace my blade, so I'll just do a little bit again. So now I have 2 equal size cards. Now what I want to do is fold these in half. So you can just take this edge, line it up with that edge, and press it so you have a fold there. Sometimes your paper will crack when you fold it that way, so it's nice to give it a little bit of a stretch. Here is a tool that we use for this, and don't let that intimidate you. If you don't have one of these tools called Score Pal, I'll show you a way to just kind of cheat and do without that. But if you do a lot of cards, it's nice to have something that makes it just go perfect for you. So what we would want to do is make this fold, or what we call the score line, right in the center. So our card is going to fold over in half. So we have our piece of paper at 8.5 inches. So half of that is going to be 4.25 inches. So right here. In fact, they have on this tool a little asterisk there because that's the typical center of your typical size card. So I'll score it down there, and you might be able to see it's got like a little crease started. So what that has done is just stretched the fibers of the paper so that when they fold, you'll get a nice fold in your paper instead of it cracking. Also, the cracks come if it's a thicker paper or the quality of the paper isn't as high. You can get some cracks in it that way too. So now that I have this little ditch, or we sometimes call that the valley, I'm going to fold my card this way. And because I cut it perfectly square, these corners are going to line up perfectly square, aren't they? And actually, it doesn't quite. Okay, so we're going to go this way. Whoops. Is that lining up for me? And then I'm just going to take my same tool and crease it here really nice. And that gives me this really nice crease where there's no cracking happening. So my card will open and close, and it's just got this real nice crease there. If you don't have this tool, here's another way that you can do this on your paper trimmer. So not all paper trimmers are the same, but on this one, where this blade travels, there's a little ditch here. So in this little ditch, I can also put my card. Again, I would use the center of it. So at 8.5 inches, 4.25 is the center. So I'm going to put this edge at 4.25 inches. And then right where your blade goes, right where you would normally cut, is going to be the center of this 8.5 piece of card. But instead of cutting it with my blade, I'm going to leave the blade down here out of the way. I'm going to take this tool, which is a stylus tool. It's just got this metal little ball on the end of it. And by pushing this down just gently, because I don't want to tear my paper, I'm just going to, and it's going to travel in this little ditch. So if I run it down here, it stays in the ditch. It's like your bowling alley going down the gutter. It just holds it right there. And I'm just going to gently push it down the ditch on my card. And I'll do that a few times because I'm just going to go gentle to start with and work those. I'm stretching the fibers of the paper again. And then when I take it out of here, I've got that same little ditch that you saw me on with the score tool. Now it helps when you go to fold this. If you have a tool like what comes with this Score Pal, I have this nice little folder to press it with. But if you don't have that, wow, I didn't do that perfect. If you don't have that, you can use just your finger, or if you have, your ruler, it's just something to give it a nice press there. So there we go. We have one, and I've lost my other one already. Here we go. So now out of our one 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, we've cut it in half, folded each of those in half, and now we have 2 card bases. So this is the very beginning of our cards, and that's why this is considered a very standard or typical size card, because you're getting the best use out of that one sheet of paper. So the way I'm going to show you how to make your very first card, if you haven't made one before, is basically the 3 steps. So you have your card base, you have your focal point, and then if you'd like, you can embellish it. So this is our card base. This would be step 1. We've ended up with 2 card bases. So now my next step is I want some kind of a focal point for on here. And there are, I don't know, tons of ways that you can create a focal point. And this is where it can become overwhelming. If you've never made a card and you walk into Scrap and Bean and we have 4,000 square feet of items to choose from, it can really become overwhelming. So I'm just going to pick out one thing here that I've done, but just know that there's so many different things that you can do to create a card. So this scrapbook paper, actually I brought home both of these. These are some new Valentine papers we got in, so it just makes it really easy to create from that. This one is a whole sheet of these heart shapes. I think they're really cute. And this one is a sheet repeating this pattern of frames. So I'm just going to cut some of these out and use that to decorate on top of my card base. So creating my focal point. So I'm going to start with just cutting out some of these frames here. And of course, if you didn't have the paper trimmer, you could just use a scissors to do this. But because I have this wonderful handy tool, I'll make use of it. I'm not even sure where the center is, but anyways, that'll work. Okay, and you can see these are different sizes. It's just this one happened to be close to the edge of the paper, where this one is in the center. So yeah, different sizes. So you're just going to adjust as you go. Now, if I were to just take this and put it onto a card, I feel like it's kind of empty. So I want to fill in a little bit more there. And some ways you can do that. One thing is I could just take the back side of this other card. If I don't need all these hearts, I can do the back side and put something else here. This would be a beautiful focal point. So you can often just cut up your paper and use it that way. I did bring some patterns paper someplace. Here's some coordinating paper that I brought home. So to make my card, I don't want just this big ivory spot here. I'm going to put some of this pattern paper on, which matches with my focal point. So what I want is to create this little ivory frame around, and then this is going to be a little bit smaller. So we'll measure our card front, and we're going to do this, cut the pink one smaller. I hope I'm not making this confusing. So it's 4 1/4 inches wide. I'm going to make this 1/4 inch smaller all the way around. So this is 4 1/4. Then I'm going to cut this down to 4 inches. So that's going to make it 1/4 inch smaller. Now going this direction, the height of my card is 5 1/2 inches. So if I go 1/4 inch smaller, we're going 5 1/4. So I just measure that out. And now when I put it down there, I have this little ivory. Well, if I put it down straight, it helps. Okay, my cards aren't perfect. I have this nice little ivory border all the way around my pattern paper. So there's the beginning of a card. And then when I put my focal point on here, you can kind of see how something's coming together. And we could just glue that down, and there's a nice little card. I did stamp out with some Happy Valentine's Day sentiments, so I can put that across my card, and we could call it done. But I like to step it up just a little bit. So before I glue it all together, I'm going to cut out one of these little hearts and just add that as a decoration. So that's my embellishment that's going on to this card. And I'll just cut out my heart design here. And now I think I've got a card. So what I do here when I'm just, thinking up a design for my card, I do what I call a dry run. So I don't have anything glued down. And that way I can keep changing my mind of what I want to do. So here's what I'm thinking. Here's some cards that I did already. It was like this. So that works. Or if I decide I want it in the center. So you can keep moving it around and changing it. Or maybe I don't want the heart at all. Or maybe I want it over here. So you can keep changing your mind until you glue things down. But once you glue it down, of course, it's there. So now I just have all my little embellishments for my card. And to glue it down, of course, there's many, many options. But I'm going to show you with using liquid glue because most of you will likely have at least like some Elmer's glue at home. So that's totally going to work. If you have double-sided tape, that's going to work too. So I'm going to put down my first layer. And this is kind of my chance to just double check and make sure that everything measures up. I don't have to retrim anything. And then I'm going to put just a little bit of glue on the back side here. You don't need much. And when you are using liquid glue, because it is liquid, if you were to just put way too much on here, it can cause your paper to buckle a little bit, and we don't want that to happen. So I'm just putting a little bit on there. It's going to be enough to hold it. It's only a piece of paper it's holding together. Put that down and kind of have it in the center. There. Then our next layer, we're going to put in the center there. So again, I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on there. Put that down in the center. Then this little heart that I cut out. Put a little bit of glue on there. And I'm just going to set that off to the side. And then this little piece that I stamped and cut out that just says Happy Valentine's Day. We could glue that down too. That's what I'll do. I'll just glue it down flat. Those of you that do scrapbooking, you know about foam adhesive. You could do that too to lift it up. But we're going to keep this simple, just with glue. Glue that down, and we're done. There's our card. You can write a greeting on the inside, and you've got a quick Valentine's card. So what about if the kids are helping you? Well, you know what? Take whatever piece of paper you have at home. I don't even know what this one measures. We'll see, but it looks like if I fold it in half, it would probably be a decent sized card. And it is. It's 8.5 by 5.5. So it's probably a piece I cut before, planning to use it for a card. Okay, so what if you don't have a tool for scoring? Well, let's try this. We're just going to take the corners and bend them over to match the corners. And then I'm going to try this by just putting my ruler in there. What would happen if I just kind of use that to help press it? Okay, my paper cracks a little bit. Well, not really cracks. I'm just not getting that really nice fold there. But you know what? It's going to be okay. It's really not bad. So there you can do it with no tools at all. Just take your paper and fold it in half. And you know, remember when we were kids and we used to cut out Valentines just by folding your paper in half? Okay, I'm going to try that. So if you fold your paper in half, and let's draw a heart, because you can always draw half a heart, even if you can't get a whole one. There we go. Then we'll cut it. And you could do 2 or 3 and fit them on there, glue them down, and there your kids have a Valentine to give as